My name is Hydo, and welcome to the Pantheon, where today we're having a look at Perrie the the Pulverizer. And what an enormous threat he is. Look at him with his big horn. Big horn. Anyway, Perrie the Pulverizer, 4 mana for a 3/3, enters the battlefield, put a shield counter on target creature. If it would be dealt damage or destroyed, remove a shield counter from it instead. So that target creature could be itself. And in this build, I'd definitely choose that because I want to make Perrie into a colossal threat. Whenever it attacks target creature you control gains trample and gets +X until end of turn, where X is the number of different kinds of counters among permanents you control. Now that is a really fun build around, to be honest. You know, being able to sort of play around with that and just hopefully get different counters knocking around. I like it. I like it a lot, and it's a fun little build. So let's dive a bit deeper into what Perrie can really do. But why don't you dive into my back catalogue of videos, hey, self-promotion, and subscribe and join me on the journey through Magic. I've got tons of videos, going to be making tons more for all different legendary creatures. So come along on the journey. But let's have a look at what Perrie can do. So at number 5, we've got Exalted, Slumbering Isle. And what I think is very important is that the theme of your deck impacts every part of it. So the ramp selection should sort of play into the counter theme. Exalted is a great way of doing that, and it's a big threat at the end of the game anyway. 4 mana, 12/12, enters the battlefield tapped with 5 slumber counters on it. Oh, I'm tired. Anyway, as long as it has a slumber counter on it, it's a land, so it taps for mana, which it says down at the bottom. This creature, or the land it becomes, can tap to add a green and a blue. Whenever you cast a spell, remove a slumber counter from Exalted. So those slumber counters are always going to be there, but they will be there for a good portion of the game. Really, really nice, and that takes me on to Replicating Ring, another way of getting an interesting counter onto the field. 3 mana for a snow artifact, tap to add 1 mana of any colour. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a night counter on Replicating Ring. Then, if there are 8 or more night counters on it, remove all of them and create 8 colour snow artifact tokens named Replicating Ring with tap to add 1 mana of any colour. So if you do end up with 8 of them, well, counters, you end up with 8 like things that ramp you. So it's well worth losing that 1 counter to be catapulted massively ahead. And you incidentally get the counters anyway. You're going to be getting them, so it's nice to have this in your ramp package. Then we got the Strixhaven Stadium, which is not only a good way of getting counters because it's point counters, but this could also win you the game, or, you know, make a player lose the game. 3 mana for an artifact, tap to add a colour, and put a point counter on Strixhaven Stadium. Way! Whenever a creature deals combat damage to you, remove a point counter from Strixhaven Stadium. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to an opponent, put a point counter on Strixhaven Stadium. So many words! Then, if there are 10 or more point counters on it, remove them all, and that player loses the game. Will that happen? Probably not. But it's a cool thing to have around, and like I said, just having your ramp work for the style of deck works brilliantly, and this is a great card to have. Then finally, we've got Coalition Relic, a classic here. 3 mana for an artifact, so you can tap to add 1 mana of any colour, or you can put a charge counter on Coalition Relic. Charge counters are sort of a more typical counter, but it's nice to have here. Beginning of your pre-combat main phase, remove all charge counters from Coalition Relic. Add 1 mana of any colour for each charge counter removed this way. Pretty goddamn good. Nice bit of acceleration. You could end up getting 2 mana at a turn if you tap it and you've already put a charge counter on it. Or you could just store the charge counter before combat, and then you're going to get an extra +1/+1 on your commander. Nice ramp selection. Which takes me on to number 4. And at number 4, we've got lands that also help add the counters on there. Gemstone Cavern is one of the coolest ones there is. Legendary land, if it is in your opening hand and you're not the starting player, you may begin the game with it on the battlefield with a luck counter on it. If you do, exile a card from your hand. This is the only way to get the counter on it, but it's a luck counter. You don't see that often, do you? So really, really cool, and it can help accelerate you very quickly in the game. You're going to be able to play another land, so you've got 2 mana on your first turn, and get our commander out early so we can just get swinging. So it taps for a generic mana, or if it has a little counter on it, 1 mana of any colour. Well, cool. Then there's Gemstone Mine. It comes into play with 3 mining counters on it. Tap, remove a mining counter from it, add 1 mana of any colour to your mana pool. If there are no mining counters on it, sacrifice it. So again, a risky land to play, but I think it's worth it to just add to the sort of fun of the deck. Very, very cool. Then there's the Blast Zone. Enters the battlefield with a charge counter on it. I did mention charge counter earlier, and this is another great way of getting them on the field. Taps for a colours, or you can pay double X and tap, put X charge counters on it. Then finally, there's pay 3, tap, sacrifice Blast Zone, destroy each non-land permanent with converted mana cost equal to the number of charge counters on Blast Zone. So a nice little mini board wipe built into a land that also helps contribute to our commander's ability. Very nice. Finally, oh no, not finally, there's a couple more. There's Llanowar Reborn, enters the battlefield tapped, and tap it for a green, but it has Graft. So this land comes into play with a 1/1 counter on it, and whenever a creature comes into play, we can move that 1/1 counter. So if we want to make our commander a bit more of a threat, we can move that 1/1 counter, or we could just keep it on the land. We've always got a counter knocking around, because the likelihood that someone's going to blow this up, pretty low. So very cool there. Then there's Dark Depths, one of my favourite lands of all time. The legendary Snowland, and it enters the battlefield with 10 ice counters. Ice. Ice, ice, baby. You can pay 3 to remove an ice counter from it. Why would we do that? Well, when it has no ice counters on it, sacrifice it. If you do, we create a 20/20 Marit Lage that's indestructible and it has flying. Well, if we can attack with our commander on the field, and with this, we can give that trample and we can just trample over and kill whoever's on the field. Really nice. Then Calciform Pools, I think this was in the precon, is a land that you can tap for a colours just generally, or you can pay 1 and tap it to put a storage counter on it. And the cool thing is you can build up those storage counters and then pay 1 and remove X storage counters to add X mana in any combination of white and blue. So you can really build this up, and if we've got things like Proliferate or ways to double counters, this can end up netting us a ton of mana and end up with a really explosive turn. Then finally, not something that has a counter, but it's a great way of putting counters all over the place. Nesting Grounds is a land that taps for a colours, or you can pay 1 and tap it to move a counter from a target permanent you control onto another target permanent. Activate this ability only in time you could cast a sorcery. So if you really think a board wipe is coming, you can move maybe like a charge counter onto a land or something like that. You can really manipulate the counters you already have and make sure that when we recast our commander, we're going to have enough counters to sort of make it a big impactful play. So a nice selection of lands you can use. Which takes me on to number 3. And at number 3, we've got, this came in the precon and it's one of the best. Gives you so many weird counters. Crystalline Giant. 3 mana for a 3/3 giant. At the beginning of combat on your turn, choose a kind of counter at random that it doesn't have. From among, Flying, First Strike, Death Touch, Hexproof, Lifelink, Menace, Reach, Trample, Vigilance, and a 1/1 counter. Ooh, that's 10 counters potentially. Obviously it takes 10 turns. But this ends up just being a massive threat. And with that land that we just talked about, we can move one of these counters onto our commander, maybe a hexproof counter to sort of help, or the indestructible one or something like that. Does it have indestructible counter? No. There are indestructible counters in the game though. But this card just so powerful and it just helps with this deck. Then a very interesting counter here. Cephalid Vandal, 2 mana for a 1/1. Beginning of your upkeep, put a shred counter on Cephalid Vandal. Then put the top card of your library into your graveyard for each shred counter on Cephalid Vandal. If you've got some sort of reanimator style sort of deck, maybe you want to be bringing creatures back, things like that, or you've got a lot of flashback cards, this is great for filling up your graveyard. And shred counters, not something you typically encounter. But Gwafa Hazid Profiteer is a great way of giving your opponent's creatures counters. 3 mana for a 2/2. Doesn't help our commander, but it's great. You can pay 2 and tap, put a bribery counter on target creature you don't control. Its controller draws a card, so we can make nice friends. Hey, here you go. But the great thing about it is removing the abilities for things to block, because creatures with bribery counters on can't attack or block. So the biggest threat on the board, well, it can't attack now, and guess what? It can't block our commander, so our commander can just slam in there for tons of damage. Then Vivian, Monsters Advocate, is a great way of getting lots of different counters. 5 mana for a 3 loyalty planeswalker, so it comes in with loyalty counters, which is an interesting counter. And you can look at the top card of your library anytime. You can cast creature spells from the top of your library. But it's the +1 that I'm interested in. Create a 3/3 green beast token, put either a vigilance counter, a reach counter, or a trample counter on it. So that's 3 different types of counters that we get. You know, we can sort of spread them out through the turns and you get lots of different counters. And then -2, when you cast your next creature spell this turn, search your library for a creature card with lesser converted mana cost, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Really, really good search engine there. We can really get some magnificent things out that really help. You know, cast our commander, get a crystalline giant, and then we can start building up the different kinds of counters. Very nice. Then Crescendo of War, 4 mana for an enchantment. We're very much about attacking, and at the beginning of each upkeep, put a strife counter onto Crescendo of War. Strife counters. Attacking creatures get +1/+0 for each strife counter on Crescendo of War. Blocking creatures get +1/+0 for each strife counter on Crescendo of War. So it really helps us with our nice aggressive game plan we're going on. Okay, maybe our opponents can also attack with all these strife counters, but we will take advantage of it more. Or, you know, we'll build the deck so that we do. Then we've got the Slippery Bogbender. Wonderful name. 4 mana for a 3/3 with flash and hexproof. When it hits the battlefield, put a hexproof counter on target creature. That's pretty good. And then move any number of counters from among creatures you control onto that creature. So all of those counters that we've got on the Crystalline Giant, let's move them all onto our commander, and suddenly we've got a ridiculously long list of things our commander can do. Awesome card. Really good. Protects our commander. Nice surprise. And a hexproof counter is pretty good as well. Then there's the Charging Cinderhorn to finish off. 4 mana for a 4/2. Are we playing red in this? No, we're not playing red. I don't know why I've included this card. Let's move on. You can't play this in the deck, but it's a cool card anyway. And that brings me on to number 2. I mean, you could play it. Just hope no one mentions it. But at number 2, we've got the Exalted mechanic, because I'm very much about our commander attacking. Exalted is a great way of doing that. I want to attack with just my commander, buff it, and then swing in for lethal. So, Finest Hour is a 5 mana enchantment with Exalted, so whenever a creature you control attacks alone, that creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Whenever a creature you control attacks alone, if it's the first combat phase this turn, untap that creature. After this phase, there is an additional combat phase. Amazing. So much value, and getting in there twice with our commander will really, really make people hurt, especially because we get another trigger to give our commander, I don't know, +10/+10 for all the counters we got knocking around. Terry's Chocolate Orange. Oh. Which brings me on to Rafiq of the Many. An old cool commander in band. And look at that artwork, it's phenomenal. 4 mana 3/3 was Exalted, and whenever a creature you control attacks alone, it gains double strike until end of turn. Giving Perrie double strike is pretty goddamn good, so well worth having in the deck. Then Noble Hierarch, excellent bit of ramp that works fantastically. It's got Exalted, and it's a 1 mana dork that taps for either green, a white, or a blue, so it gets all the mana that we need. Very nice. Then this one is a personal favourite of mine. I've always liked this card. The artwork, again, so gold and beautiful. 3 mana for a 2/2 with Exalted, so helps with our commander. But you can tap it to destroy target creature that dealt damage to you this turn. That's really cool, and it really makes your opponents not want to attack you with anything too threatening, because you're just going to kill it. So they're going to just chip away at small creatures, and maybe you can kill them. Really, really awesome card. I love it. It just fits so well. So Exalted, a nice mechanic that you could include as sort of a sub-set of cards in here. Which brings me on to number 1. Look at that 1. Looks like it's melting. So at number 1, we've got Viral of the Hulklade and counter doublers. Because yes, we're trying to get as many different counters as possible, but being able to just double counters on an artifact, creature, or land could end up to some really, really good plays. So Viral is a 3-mana 1/4. Pay a green and a blue for each counter on target artifact, creature, or land. Put another of those counters on that permanent. So if we're trying to build up lots of counters on our commander, maybe +1/+1 counters if you're going that way, this doubles it. Amazing. Amazing. Then, if we're going to be doubling things on artifacts, Darksteel Reactor is a phenomenal way to win the game. 4 mana for an artifact, it is indestructible, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a charge counter on Darksteel Reactor, so it gives itself a counter, so that helps out, doesn't it? When it has 20 or more charge counters on it, you win the game. So the really cool thing about Viral is you can double the counters on this. So say you end up with 5 counters, we can double that to 10. Then next turn, we can double it to 20 and we win the game. Really, really awesome. It's just a nice little sub game that you can play in this style of deck. You know, are they going to be able to win with it? Probably not, but when it happens, it'll be phenomenal. Then we got Gilda Bairn, who's a 3-mana 1/3, pay 3 and untap. So if we've attacked, obviously we can untap, or if there's ways to tap it. For each counter on target permanent, put another of those counters on that permanent. Again, another fantastic way of winning the game with this, but it just works well if we're going the +1/+1 sort of route with our commander. Then, again, if we're going to be doubling counters, Deep Glow Skate, 5 mana for a 3/3 when it enters the battlefield. Double the number of counters on of each kind of counter on any number of target permanents. That includes all the lands that we have, so all those depletion counters or whatever we've got, charge counters. Let's double them with this bad boy. Then, this is an interesting one and very cool if you're going down the +1/+1 sort of route. Very mana intensive though. Evolution Vat, 3 mana for an artifact. Pay 3, tap target creature and put a 1/1 counter on it. Okay, so you could use this to sort of fog an attack from a big guy. Until end of turn, that creature gains pay 4, double the number of 1/1 counters on that creature. So if we've gone really hard into sort of +1/+1 counters, what we can do, we can leave 38 mana up, we can tap our commander and then just keep doubling his power over and over again. Awesome. Really, really cool and very niche application out of it, but I think it works really well in the deck. Then, here we go. If we're going to be doubling counters, let's double the counter on Azor's Elocutors. 5 mana for a 3/5. Beginning of your upkeep, put a Filibuster counter. Very rare counter there. Onto this. When it has 5 or more Filibuster counters on it, you win the game. Hey! Whenever a source deals damage to you, remove a Filibuster counter from Azor's Elocutors. So if we can get 1 on there, we can double it and double it again, double again, and then we win the game. But it's just such a cool little build around. These alternate win conditions, I think, are so fun in a deck like this. And a Filibuster counter is a very bizarre counter. Then, if we're going down the +1/+1 counters route, doubling Season is amazing. And it's just amazing with all of our counters. So 5 mana for an enchantment. If an effect would create 1 or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many of those tokens instead. Ooh. If an effect would put 1 or more counters on that permanent you control, it puts twice of that many counters on instead. Wow. That is just phenomenal. We all know this card. It's so good, so powerful. And there we go. Lots of ways to double counters. Really, really cool. And, you know, a couple of win conditions thrown in there for good measure. So I think Perrie is really cool and, you know, quite an interesting card to build around. If you like this, please do subscribe. Got tons more videos coming like this, so come and join me on the journey. Thank you. We'll see you soon. Bye.